So Gerard Batten was on, was it Politics Live on the BBC the other day, and he absolutely hammered it.
You are someone who supports Tommy Robinson. You'd actually like him to join UKIP. This is a man, of course, who's a convicted criminal, a man who led the far-right English Defence League and was once considered beyond the pale by the party you now lead.
OK, let's examine that. This man is a convicted criminal. Lots of people are convicted criminals for lots of different reasons. And by saying he's a convicted criminal, it makes it sound like he's still in jail. And if he's not in jail, then we surely believe in the recuperative, redemptive and reformist nature of our prisons, don't we? So if he's gone to jail for a crime and he's been released, then we consider him reformed and ready to be reintegrated into society, do we not? Joe Coburn, I believe it is. Do you not think that that's something, or do you think that criminals, it should just be a scarlet letter? Criminals, once convicted of a crime, boom, that's it. It's stamped on your forehead. You shall never be allowed into polite society. God, it's the most bourgeois bloody way of approaching anything ever. And yeah, you go, oh, well, he was once considered beyond the pale. Well, yes. Because once, the Overton window was so far to the left, the idea of considering a Muslim to be a criminal was racism. Honestly, your fucking defensive bourgeois gatekeeping is insufferable. I tell you what, folks, don't feel that you don't have to send her this video. You can send her this video. I want her to hear my opinions. And Joe, if you actually watch this and you're sitting there, I'm offended, I'll come and talk to you myself. How's that?
And who said this, Gerard Batten? Every single Muslim watching this, on 7/7, you got away with killing and maiming British citizens. The Islamic community will feel the full force of the English Defence League if we see any of our British citizens killed, maimed or hurt on British soil ever again.
OK, let's examine that statement. What does that mean? That means they're hurt. That means they are upset. That means this has happened too many fucking times. OK, let's examine that statement. That's clearly made in anger, passionately, years ago, probably directly after a terrorist attack, when their community is reeling from the fact that there is another community that regularly produces people that try to murder them. They have to live with them every day of the week, especially when the authorities are afraid of punishing members of this community for fear of being called racist by people like you.
This is the man you'd like to see join UKIP, and you are backing a call to violence against a whole community.
Given how the EDL don't really exist anymore, it seems like a bit of a stretch to suggest that he's going to make them feel the full force of anything. But more importantly, why aren't you concerned that there was a community of working class people who are suffering because of their neighbours who happen to be Muslims, and you don't care about them at all? Why don't you care about your countrymen? What is it about them that you can't stand? I mean, I already know it's the fact that they're working class. We all know this. It's very obvious, palpable, because every criticism you have of them is a bourgeois middle-class criticism. As if Tommy Robinson gives a fuck, or any of the people around him give a fuck that Tommy's been to jail. You know many of them have, Joe. You know, the working class overwhelmingly have more criminal convictions than the middle class. And so you gatekeeping by saying, well, I mean, he has a criminal conviction. Don't care, Joe. Don't care. Get on with it.
Your producer asked me onto this programme to talk about Brexit, and I said I'd do that. And they said, Tommy Robinson might come up. And I said, OK. You've had me on here. I've come here today to talk about Brexit, and now you want to talk about Tommy Robinson. Now, it seems to me that the media is obsessed with Tommy Robinson. So let me finish. If you want Tommy Robinson, why don't talk about Tommy Robinson? Why don't you invite him onto your show?
Well, that's a bloody good question. If they invited Tommy Robinson onto the show, look at them, they'd have to answer a few bloody questions. They would come face to face with the monster that they have created. They can't have that, can they?
Yeah, but Gerard, hang on, I will. You can give it to us.
I can give that to you after the show.
But Gerard Batten, you have made...
You ask him these questions directly, because the media say a lot of things about Tommy Robinson.
Why do you want him to be part of UKIP?
Because he's representative of a large swathe of the country that are not being served in modern politics and have a legitimate political grievance. He deserves to have a voice. They deserve to have a voice. Why is this difficult to understand? And also, if you're out there and you don't have a voice, that's why UKIP's there.
And to answer the questions about Tommy Robinson, is Tommy Robinson who can give you the truth about what's happened to him. So why don't you ask him on your show?
Right,
no, I'm talking to Joe. You've had a good go. You've had a good go.
Siobhan, I'm going to let you. I will let you talk to Gerard in a moment. But first of all, Gerard Batten, it is you who has made Tommy Robinson a thing as far as your leadership
is concerned. No, I haven't. I have been asked constantly about him.
Let me put the question to, because you want.
This is totally fair. right? Gerard is being asked constantly about Tommy, and it's just like, he's not his boss. It's not even Gerard's decision as to whether Tommy can come into the party or not. So, like, continually asking him about it, I mean, it seems kind of unfair, really, but at the end of the day, you know, Gerard does support Tommy, and rightfully so they can get fucked. And I love the way that the host is just like, listen, let me interrogate you a little further. Have we not had this question yet?
Him to join UKIP. UKIP actually has in its constitution very clearly states that they will not have members or former members of the English Defence League joining UKIP. You say you would like him to join and that you changed the rules in order to have him join. So you made it a thing, not me.
Hang on. What other parties prevent people from the EDL or the BNP from joining? That's right, none. So Tommy Robinson is actually able to just join the Labour Party, but he's not actually able to join UKIP. That's very interesting, isn't it? It's almost like UKIP are the ones who are actually concerned about keeping out the undesirables that you're so concerned about. And as I'm aware, there are ex-BNP councillors in Labour and the Conservatives. Wow, this really makes you think. Now I see where all the anti-Semitism's coming from.
And don't make it immediate. No, let me finish. You also tweeted in support of those army cadets who were surrounding Tommy Robinson in that picture.
Sorry, Gerard, you're complaining that Gerard was tweeting in support of a bunch of working-class young lads who had joined the army and got kicked out because they had a photo with a celebrity. Wow, okay, well, Gerard, how dare you tweet in defence of those poor lads who are being unfairly victimised by the establishment that is terrified to talk about the growing problem of Islamism in Britain? You monster!
Which is why we started with that. So let's just get that clear. It is perfectly fair to ask you questions about why you want Tommy Robinson, and I have put into context who Tommy Robinson is. Why do you want that man to join UKIP?
First of all, in our constitution there is a provision which allows us to waive the rule if that's the agreement of the chairman and the NEC. And let me finish because I'm answering your question, whereby we can waive the rule on prescribed membership of people who've been in prescribed parties if that's something that we want to do.
Right.
I have said as my personal opinion that I wouldn't mind, I would be in favour of Tommy Robinson being allowed to join because I think that he's a tremendously brave man. He's done a lot of things that I'm happy to say that I don't condone, I don't approve of, but I think in the great scheme of things, he's a very heroic person who stands up for the victims of industrialised sexual abuse in this country.
All right, well, let's talk
and
about that.
If we could let him in, then I'd be happy with that. But that will be a decision of our party members,
right.
Not me.
But
that was a fantastic answer. And I agree with him. I think that Tommy is tremendously brave. I think he is standing up to government oppression. There is no doubt the way the police harass him and his family that he is being a victim of a targeted campaign by the state. I think it's remarkably noble that Gerard will actually stand up, even when it's such an unpopular thing to do. Even when it's such a demonised and ridiculed and harassed political movement that Tommy is leading. I think it's absolutely fantastic that Gerard will stand up and say, no, I recognise the good in there. And that's not to say there's no bad. That's not to say that none of them have done anything wrong or that they don't have criminal records or anything like that. A lot of them do. But they're still our countrymen. We can't just say, fuck them. Your problems, the things that are ruining your lives and destroying your communities, not our problem. You know, you're just some other, we don't have to care about you. You can just go and rot. I don't think it's going to wash with them. You know, I have a funny feeling that they might start, smashing in kebab shops or something. Oh, wait, they're already doing that? Right, okay. Well, then it might start escalating if we don't do something now. They have a right to representation because they are citizens of our country and they vote. You fucking gatekeepers.
why do you want a man who has condemned and does condemn whole communities for the crimes of a few?
So do you. You condemn whole communities for the crimes of a few. What about Gamergate? In fact, I love how this can be brought up at any point, at any time, and it's still applicable. Seriously, any kind of community that does something, you will turn around and say, well, that community's terrible, until it serves your interest not to do so. It's just that normally it's not based around religion. Normally it's based around an interest.
Because I don't do that. I talk about the ideology.
You support this man.
Well, everybody says lots of things. I don't necessarily agree with everything that they say.
But you want to change the rules in your party
no, I don't
to
want
have
to change
that man.
the rules.
You would like...
He's already answered that question. The provision is already there. He can just invoke it. You said okay earlier. You know, I mean, what the fuck? Why are you bringing this up, woman?
Members to back a change in the rules from someone who led a prescribed organisation.
I would like the rules under our constitution which can be set aside in particular cases. So I'm not asking for anything completely different from what we've got now, just to be considered in one case.
Right.
And I think in the great scheme of things, if you look at what he does in its entirety, then it's more good than bad, and I think he's a very brave man that's standing up for the victims. Now, can I say something about the cadets?
No.
No! No, you cannot try and speak in the defence of these young men who got victimised. But I mean, I love the way that Batten sees Tommy Robinson in the same way that Diane Abbott sees Mao. Just laying that out for you, Joe Coburn. If saying, on average, I think they did more good than bad, works for Diane Abbott and Chairman Mao, surely it works for Batten and Tommy Robinson. I mean, you know, I agree. Tommy's an awful, racist, working-class Islamophobe. But he's not quite Mao Zedong, is he? Just come on. Why do I even have to say that?
First of all, I'm going to let Siobhan in, and then we'll come back to the cadets.
The people sticking up for the victims were the very British justice system that had these guys on trial.
Are you insane? It took decades to recognise that there even were any victims because of the justice system. Because of not just the justice, the people operating it. Not even the justice system. The people who man it. Not the way the system works. The fear and bigotry and prejudices of the people in the system prevented this from coming to light for decades and allows it to carry on even now. We are not going to say that the British justice system did nothing wrong in regards to Muslim rape gangs. They absolutely did, and it is fucking disgraceful.
That he was filming outside.
He was filming outside. Well, I mean, that's way worse than saying it's okay for 20-something-year-old Turkish men to rape young, 12, 13-year-old white girls because otherwise you're a racist. That's...
You know, yes, people did let these girls down and probably are letting these girls down, and things got in the way, and these people should have been found much sooner. But
listen to those fucking excuses. Oh, they were letting them down. Letting them down! They were being raped over the course of years by hundreds of men. You letting them down? Oh, well, I mean, if we're just going to brush this under the carpet, that's the easiest way to do it.
it's happened now. There are court cases going on. There have people been prosecuted. And so it is working and it is happening. And from my perspective, Tommy Robinson is jumping on this bandwagon after it has left the station.
Well, that's because you're an idiot and you don't know what you're talking about. Tommy's been talking about this for years, probably decades now. Way before the Rotherham Report, Tommy Robinson was talking about this. Like, there are clips from him talking about this in like 2011, 2010. This is such an unbelievable rewriting of history because it's someone you don't like and therefore it's inconvenient. No, you will give Tommy his dues on this. He came out with this first. There's a reason why V calls him the Prophet. Tommy Robinson, there are grooming gangs. Tommy Robinson, there are violent, thuggish gangs. Tommy Robinson, there are prison gangs. Boom, right on every single one. And often Robinson was like literally about 5 or 6 years before anyone else was saying it. He was fucking saying it. Yeah, in many ways he has been completely prophetic on exactly what's happened. And the fact that you want to rewrite history and just sweep him under the carpet, oh, it's actually someone else. No, get fucked.
All right.
They weren't let down. This was brushed under the carpet for 20 or 30 years by Labour authorities, the social services and Labour authorities, also the police forces, brushed this under the carpet.
Look at her fucking face. Yeah, I bet you want to get a word in edgeways here, because Batten is fucking nailing it. He is just laying it out exactly as it was. Absolutely sterling job.
Didn't want to know about it. It's only down to a few journalists and people like... Let me finish, please. You've had a long go.
Hang on, Joe. This is a conversation. It's not just you riding roughshod over everyone.
Oh, yeah, him riding roughshod everyone. Can I finish? No. Yeah, him riding roughshod. He's not being attacked by you and everyone on the panel or anything. It's him riding roughshod over everyone because he has strong defences and strong rebuttals to everything you're saying, and you end up looking silly. Right, sorry, but he's riding roughshod. Carry on. Sorry, I didn't mean to make it seem like you were being belligerent or anything.
Down to a few journalists and people like Tommy Robinson and Peter McLaughlin, who wrote a book on this called Easy Meat, that we know about this at all.
Look at their faces. Look at the middle-class disdain. My goodness, I can't believe we have to talk about a problem the lower orders are having. This violates my bourgeois moral norms. I don't like this. I can't handle it. I'm going to pretend Gerard is being rude. That's what they're thinking, ladies and gentlemen.
If it had been up to the Labour Party, we'd never know about it.
Can I just
True. True, completely true. Great delivery there too.
say...
Well, answer that question,
Yeah,
Siobhan.
I completely accept that councils let those girls down.
Labour councils and allowed them to be raped is more accurate than let them
I
down.
completely
Let's put it
accept
mildly.
that the police
Nailed it.
let those girls down. But what I'm saying, it's brave social workers, brave victims, people who were willing to stand up and be counted.
Not sure the social workers were all that much help in the early days. I think it took a bit of outrage to get them off their asses too. You know, I mean, they were just as complicit as the police and the councilmen. And sorry, carry on.
That has got this issue as far as the courts and to system reviewed.
All right,
It is not
we've talked
Tommy
about this.
Robinson.
Really, Tommy had no part in this. Okay. I mean, it would be nice to write him out of history. Since you're a big fan of rewriting history and making things up as you go along, I suppose we can write Tommy out of it. Why not? What difference does that make to anyone other than Tommy and his supporters? But it's okay, they're just working class scum, aren't they? So it really doesn't matter whether we malign them, steal their achievements. It's not their problem. It's not our problem, sorry. It's their problem. So fuck them. Am I right?
And
talked
a Labour
about this.
MP
Hang on,
said
Gerard,
they
we've
should
talked
shut up
about
for the
this.
sake of diversity.
Is that someone's Shah, was it? Naz Shah, I think it was. I can't remember her name. But yeah, maybe they should shut up for the sake of diversity, you know. I mean, it would be far more diverse if these white children would stop complaining about being raped.
And
then
the
they're not
victims.
that MP at
Let's hear from one of the victims, Sammy Woodhouse. Newsnight interviewed her. She was a victim of the grooming scandal in Rotherham. Let's hear what she said.
If they're going to talk about child rape, about the system and the failures, then they should be talking about it as a whole and not just by Pakistani Muslims. There's, majority of paedophiles are actually white males.
Imagine thinking that's a fucking relevant point. Like, as if being white is an ideology or a religion or something that as if white people have a general opinion that they all share. You know, like all Muslims believe God exists, you know, and Muhammad was his prophet. All of them believe that. There's no question. You can't be a Muslim and not believe that. So there are a certain set of beliefs. But there is no certain set of beliefs that you need to hold to be white, because what she's describing is an idea versus a race. I really wonder when it is she started saying things like this.
Right, well, Gerard Batten, that is one of the victims who has basically said that there are people using this for their own political gain.
Well, then they must be right. I mean, they must know exactly what they're talking about.
You're one of those people.
No, I'm not. There are paedophiles across the whole of society. For example, the BBC covered up...
You walked right into that one, Joe. You blundered into it, into the Jimmy Savile accusations. Okay, time to change the subject. Tell us about white men, Joe.
Well,
Jimmy Savile for 50
white
years, didn't they?
paedophiles? Are
Because-
there white paedophiles?
Of course there are.
What is the idea in the white people's heads that are making them do it? Are they saying, oh, well, you know, like Alfred the Great used to have female sex slaves who were underage, therefore white people in general are allowed to have sex slaves underage? Is that how do you figure this happens? What I love about this is it's like Joe thinks that every Muslim paedophile was a member of a grooming gang, and not that there are other Muslims who are also paedophiles. In the same way there are white people who are paedophiles. But there aren't white people who aren't necessarily paedophiles, but do believe that a white person that they think is a prophet from God abused children, and so it's okay for them to abuse children. I don't see that. But that's definitely something we see coming out of certain Muslim communities, so it is something we should be able to talk about. It's something we can identify. It's like she's got a Geiger counter, and she comes across a nuclear test site, and Gerard Batten says, wow, this thing's really going off the scale, it's going crazy. I wonder if there's a nuclear bomb here. And she just turns to him and goes, did you not see that there was background radiation? When we were over there, it was still clicking. Not as fast, but it was still clicking. Are you saying it wasn't clicking over there, Gerard?
Right.
But
And
this-
do you condemn all white people
the
because there are a few white paedophiles?
The BBC covered
Answer
up
my
the whole Jimmy
question.
Savile thing for 50 years. Yes, there are, and I would come down on those people with the full force of the law. In this particular instance, there is the industrialised exploitation in sexual slavery across the country, which is not just being done for the sake of a perverted lust, but for business, run out of cab offices, run out of fast food offices, where girls are trafficked up and down the country.
But why are you changing the subject? Why can't you address the point he's made? We're not saying every Muslim is responsible for this, but we are saying that these are coming out of Muslim communities, and so that needs to be addressed. We need to be able to talk about that. And if you aren't capable of talking about that, Joe, maybe you should avoid the subject.
You're condemning all Muslims who sign up to... But you are condemning a whole community, all Muslims, men, women and children, if they adhere to an ideology that you think is hateful.
You do that with fucking everyone! What do you think you are condemning the EDL for, you fucking moron? You literally are saying, well, these people all agree to an ideology that I find hateful, therefore they're all bad people. What do you think your opinion on Nazis is? You moron! That's not wrong. If you don't like an ideology and you don't like the way it makes people behave, then yes, you will condemn a community that follows that ideology because their behaviour will either be permissive of or broadly in line with exactly the thing that you're objecting to. Everyone does this, Joe. Like, it's not... I can't believe it. Yeah, well, fucking believe it. If you came across a bunch of Aztecs, right, and they were all like, right, we're going to capture these people and cut out their hearts, and everyone's cheering, cut out his heart, would you condemn that whole community? Or would you be like, oh, well, some of them are good? No, you don't. They're all cheering to cut a guy's heart out. And the thing is, Joe, a condemnation is just a condemnation. Like, it's not something that hurts anyone. It's okay to condemn things that you don't agree with. I'm just saying.
Individuals, and I've never spoken about individuals. I talk about the ideology, and you know because you've had me on this programme before.
And who are the people who follow that ideology?
Well,
Islamists! What the fuck stupid question is that? You know, the people who are like, we want a caliphate now, and all of the people wearing burqas and thobes who are like, yeah, I'd probably quite like a caliphate, but I'm not going to bother agitating for myself. You know, the moderates. The fucking moderates. Wearing a burqa and they're going to call you a moderate.
They are men, women and children who are part of the Muslim community. So you are condemning a whole...
Okay. There are men, women and children who are part of the Nazi community that you're busy condemning. Are you going to retract your condemnation of Nazism now, Joe?
First of all, I don't know how much they know about their own ideology. Perhaps you should have someone and ask them. I don't know how much they're signed up to it. I don't know how many agree with it. There are lots who leave that religion. I know because I've spoken at conferences.
Right, so is the only Muslim that you like someone who leaves the religion?
That's not a Muslim, dumbass. Fucking hell. What are you? Are you fucking thick? Someone who leaves Islam is not a Muslim. So it can't be the only Muslim you like is not a Muslim. That's a statement that doesn't make sense definitionally, Joe. I know you're just talking off the cuff, but you're really not thinking this through, and that's the thing that really annoys me. You're not listening to what the man's saying. You're just trying to frame him in a way that means you don't have to listen. You can say, no, he's just a hateful bigot, out of sight, out of mind.
No, I have no problem with people who obey the law, want to live in a Western liberal democracy.
And the majority of Muslims do.
And can integrate with that. My problem is always with the ideology, because the ideology is the root of the problem.
Right. It is a religion, by the way. It's not an ideology. It is a religion.
Distinction without a difference there, Joe. What we're talking about is a worldview. If you find it wholly compatible... I mean, thankfully, the only thing that saves communism from being worse than it already is the fact that Marx didn't say that it was a prophet from God. It's actually worse to be a religion than an ideology. Just saying, Joe. Carry on.
All religions are ideologies.
I go to church every Sunday, and I am, in many respects, proud of the Catholic Church. I am not proud of the sexual abuse that has happened, but I don't condemn my faith, the people who go to my church, all priests, because of sexual abuse.
Well, you don't even condemn the ones who are like conspiring to cover it up either. You're like going, well, I mean, it's just the one guy. No, the people who are keeping it silent are all culpable. I mean, like, you understand that, right? That if they knew and they cover it up and they help keep this under wraps for years, which is what happened, then they are also culpable. It speaks to a systemic cultural issue within the Catholic Church, the Muslim community. Honestly, you can say the same thing with, like, violence in the EDL or the DFLA. Yeah, they've got violent elements. It speaks to a cultural problem within that group, you know? You can talk about the group as a separate thing. I mean, every single one of these people will undoubtedly condemn the DFLA, even though it's an entire culture of people that they're condemning. It doesn't matter. One rule for one rule for another. It's okay to talk about things. For the love of God, it's okay to talk about things.
Those who are responsible need to be dealt with and feel the full force of the law, and it's the same across any faith.
The Catholic religion, which follows the gospel, nowhere in the gospel does Jesus say, those you have taken with your right hand you may possess.
But not everyone signs up to every letter of what is in religious text.
Some Muslims...
They think it's the word of God. Are you, like... This is the problem that you have dealing with people in burqas and thobes and people who end up blowing themselves up. They unironically believe it. They think it's the literal word of God. Like, you think, well, they don't believe everything. Who gets to pick and choose what God said is true or not? Like, who gets to decide?
In relation to sex slavery,
Right,
because it was something that their prophet did and something that they think is acceptable.
What would you do? What would Gerard Batten in UKIP Britain do with Muslims who are and follow their religion and their text?
Nothing.
Perfect answer. Nothing. As long as they're following the law, nothing can be done about them. And nothing should be done about them. Although I do think we should probably ban the burqa. I'm at the point where I'm just like, I just don't like it. Fuck it. And, that's authoritarian. Okay. But the alternative is to allow the proliferation of radical Islam in Britain. And I want to stop the proliferation of radical Islam in Britain. It's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Those who want to obey the law and don't cause a problem, I wouldn't do anything any more than any other citizen. But what we must do is take action against this kind of thing.
What
the
would you
first
do?
step is actually prosecuting these cases
That's what's
rigorously. I'm not sure it's happening as rigorously as you might think, because it's still going on in a widespread way.
And it needs to
what we
continue to be
need to do
prosecuted.
is to stop importing this ideology, which most of the, or half at least of the mosques and imams in this
You need
country
to
are
stop calling
supported
it
by
an ideology, because it is a
places
religion
like
for Muslims
Saudi
in this country.
Arabia and Pakistan, who are importing extremist ideology to us, and we need to clamp down on that.
Right, Batten's completely correct there. At least 50% are Deobandi and Salafist, Saudi Arabian and the Pakistani version of Islam that is adopted by the Taliban. So it's not like Batten's in any way incorrect here. And just because it's a religion doesn't mean it can't be an ideology. Joe.
And it is an ideology because it's a belief system. All religions are ideologies because you sign up to a particular belief system.
Toby?
Not only that, I mean, these people are demanding political Islam. So you can say, well, it's just a religion, yeah, but it also has a political dimension. There is wrapped up within it a political ideology where they will make political demands of us. So don't sit there and say, well, it's not an ideology. Yes, it absolutely is an ideology. Islamism is absolutely an ideology.
I think that, of course, the fact that there are some Muslim Pakistani men in places like Rotherham who've engaged in this appalling predatory behaviour does, of course, not mean that all Muslims should be condemned. I think where their religion, their ethnicity was a factor is that it meant that these crimes weren't investigated and prosecuted as promptly as they should have been by police officers and other authorities who were worried about being accused of racism.
But has it been used as political opportunism?
Oh, who cares? Who gives a damn? It's a political issue. Every single politician uses every single issue they talk about as political opportunism. And they choose the issues that they talk about mostly based on things that they care about. And this is clearly something that Gerard cares about. He clearly gives a shit that working class communities in the north are suffering. You don't, because you're a Londoner, and it's not your problem. You probably vote for Sadiq Khan.
By people like Gerard Batten to underline what is, and many people would regard it as, hateful rhetoric against Muslims.
Yes, but let's not single out UKIP for committing that sin.
After all,
look at all the attacks on Brett Kavanaugh in the United States recently, people singling out his ethnicity, privileged white male. This is how a white male would behave, an entitled white male.
Nailed it. I don't know who this guy is. I recognise his face, actually, but I can't remember his name, but nailed it, my friend.
Etc., etc. His ethnicity was used to condemn him, and all white people were condemned because he was white. Exactly the same sin if we're talking about committing that error.
How do you feel about
Stumbled into a bear trap there. Quick, change subject.
a party like UKIP, a party that its former leader, Nigel Farage, said shouldn't be turned into an anti-Islam party or an anti-Muslim party? He was relatively successful, you could argue. Gerard Batten is obviously ignoring that advice from Nigel Farage. How do you feel about wanting to change the party's constitution so it could allow someone like... Well, you would like the members to change it.
She keeps saying it, though. If she says it enough times, it'll become true, Gerard.
To accept someone like Tommy Robinson.
I think flirting with Tommy Robinson, I mean, whoever was to blame for the grooming scandal is one thing, but the idea that Tommy Robinson is any kind of solution, considering his history with the English Defence League, I mean...
Any kind of solution? He's an activist to raise awareness about it. As long as you're talking about it, he's doing exactly as he planned, exactly as he intended. I mean, like, he's Tommy Robinson. What is it going to be? Like a little 5'7" guy goes around punching every Muslim in Britain as the solution. Is that what you think? Like, of Tommy himself It's not like a one-man Muslim beating machine. Okay, he's just an activist. He's here to talk about the issues. He's the solution. It's just put a fucking Hitler tash on him. Just get the graphic up. Hitler tash on Tommy. There we go. Tommy's. Come on.
I used to live in Nottingham, and I remember they came to town one day and rampaged through areas of the city where ethnic minorities live, where Muslim community was based.
Oh, and we should keep them separated. That's what it is, isn't it? Segregate those white people from those Muslims. It always comes back to segregation with you guys. Always. Because what it is, and I know exactly why as well, right? It's because you won't allow the cultural interaction to take place that would change both communities. Both communities, when they come into contact, they have their interaction, they butt up against one another, and then they walk away changed from it. Things are slightly different, and the next time these changes matter, and they end up eventually synthesizing into something new. But you're preventing that from happening. How dare you criticize these people? Don't you dare use that language. Protect the Muslims, protect the minorities, so none of them will ever change and actually integrate and adapt and become normal to the people who are having a problem with them. You are holding that up right now. It's fucking irresponsible, frankly.
Causing trouble, vandalising, things, starting fights. None of this which was condemned by Tommy Robinson at the time.
Okay, why don't you phone him up? Tommy, do you condemn this? Yeah, okay, just checking.
I mean, I don't know why the media still gives Tommy Robinson a platform. He doesn't represent the working class. He's a hot air merchant. He's not been elected to anything.
Well, okay, who does represent the working class then? Who else can get 20,000 working class people out on a Sunday afternoon in London? Who else can do this? Northerners come all the way down from Sheffield and wherever to come and protest outside of Downing Street. Who else can do that if not Tommy Robinson? Just out of interest.
And the fact that UKIP is now flirting with him, I mean, that says a lot about the party, and I hope its demise continues.
Demise continues. I believe we're back on an upswing. Thank you very much, young man. And I love the idea. How dare UKIP try and serve an underserved demographic of the British population? We'd told them they were all straight white males and they should shut the fuck up. Why won't they listen?
And the party under you, what do you say about Nigel Farage's warning to you?
Well, Nigel is wrong. Nigel didn't come to the conference 2 weeks ago, and if he had have done, or he came for the dinner afterwards, but he didn't come to the actual conference, and we had 2 days of about 1,400 people there from up and down the country who are totally behind me and what I'm doing and what I'm trying to do for the party. So if I didn't have the backing of my members, then I wouldn't lead UKIP, but I do, and I intend to speak out truthfully, honestly and vigorously for the things I believe in and the things they believe in.
I mean, would you be happy to accept Nick Griffin, for example?
Absolutely
into the
not.
Listen, why the hell does he have to answer for Nick Griffin? He's leading the only party in Britain that Nick Griffin is actually not able to join. Do you ask Jeremy Corbyn that? Jeremy, would you be happy with Nick Griffin joining the Labour Party? I mean, he is technically able, and it does seem to be fertile ground for his kind of area of politics. So why doesn't Labour have any no BNP people? Why don't the Tories have that? Why don't the Lib Dems have that? I'm just asking questions.
The BNP,
Why?
Because the BNP has its roots and origins in neo-Nazism, and we do not want to be associated with that at all. We never have, and for the 25 years that I've been in UKIP, we have always had a prescription on people like the National Front and the BNP.
But you'd be happy to agitate for violence against those Muslims as you...
Fair characterisation there, Joe. That's exactly what he was saying. He was like, yeah, I'm happy to agitate for violence. I just don't want to be called BNP. Yeah, that's what it is, Joe. Good, you nailed it. You fucking nailed it.
That is an absolutely outrageous thing to accuse me of.
No, I'm asking you. I didn't accuse you. I asked you.
The accusation is implicit in the question, Joe. Come on.
Violence towards anybody.
So why do you support Tommy Robinson
here and say that to me is not only insulting, it is a gross abuse of your position with the BBC.
Not. Oh yes, it is, Joe. Oh yes, it is. You're treating him like he is some kind of Nazi. You're accusing him of, like, the BNP joining them and stuff, even though you know that they're the only party they can't join. You're accusing Tommy Robinson of being representative of Nick Griffin, even though I don't believe he is. This whole thing is middle-class gatekeeping, and I'm telling you, Joe, the problem is getting worse, it's not getting better. You need to start addressing it, you need to start being honest.
No, I asked you at the beginning, you support a man who says that the community, the Islamic community, will feel the full force of the English Defence League if we see any of our British citizens killed, maimed or hurt on British soil ever again.
That may mean that they were going to turn up and demonstrate against it. It doesn't say that they're going to be violent.
What's the full force?
A demonstration. He just told you.
Well, if people turn out in a mass demonstration, that's full force, isn't it?
Right, all right. And
that doesn't mean they're advocating violence.
I said, would you be in favour of agitating or calling for? I said it at the beginning of the interview too, you just didn't answer the question. Fine, you said you wouldn't, but you would be in favour of mass demonstrations.
That's fine, Joe. It's totally fine to demonstrate en masse. Like, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. That's, in fact, the way democracy is meant to happen. If you have a problem, you demonstrate. That's the design of the system. So don't sit there and go, so you would be okay with mass demonstrations. You are okay with mass demonstrations. You're not even thinking about the things. You're giving Gerard the win here, just so you know.
Mass demonstrations go on all the time. 1 million people demonstrated against the Iraq War, didn't they?
See? Like, of course you're fine with mass demonstrations, dummy.
All right.
Did it make any difference?
You wanted to say
because
something
only
about the
political
cadets.
parties.
You wanted to say something about the cadets, and I said you would be able to say.
First of all, it's a bit of a non-story because those cadets are merely trainees. They're not even in particular regiments or groups in the army. They are a group of trainees who turned out. They were in a car park. It was a spontaneous thing. And they actually then wanted their picture taken with Tommy Robinson. Now, that is not against any army ethic, because it's not in the Queen's regulations that say you can't have your picture taken with a celebrity.
See, and I completely understand where they're coming from. I mean, like, Tommy Robinson's a celebrity. They're a bunch of, like, 16-year-olds. They've heard the name. That's it, you know? It's someone famous. Oh, look, someone over there who's famous. People get that all the time, man. Especially in working class communities where they get kind of starstruck, you know. They often come from areas where nothing much happens. And, I mean, I know because I come from an area where nothing much happens, you know. So you can't just act like these people are all now BNP members.
So this thing has actually been blown out of all proportion.
Well, Batten absolutely nailed that. Every point he was correct on. Everything that they did was slippery and underhanded to try and get him pinned in a corner so they could say, see, you're a bad person. You're just... And the thing is, I don't think he is. And I think that they're doing things that are legitimate and need to be done. And I love watching the BBC desperately trying to halt the tide of the argument. It keeps advancing. These people are our citizens. They have a real problem. It's coming from a particular community. Predictably, we need to be able to talk about this. And they're doing everything they can to stem that tide of the argument. But it keeps rolling forward, folks. Just keep making it. Keep arguing the case. We will one day get them to acknowledge that Islam and the Muslim communities have aspects to them that are not very well compatible to British society and need to change.